Hey, I'm Kris.
And I'm Matt.
Today we wanted to take a little bit of time to talk about the process of overseeding, what this looks like, and what you can ultimately expect at the end once you've done this process.
So we're standing here in a recently overseeded lawn right now, and I just want to kind of walk through timeline and some other steps with Kris. So Kris, can you talk a little bit about spring versus fall and what the benefits might be?
Yeah, we like to overseed or do new seedings in the fall versus the spring in most parts of the country. The reason we do this is because the fall offers some strategic advantages to us. One of them being soil temperatures are still warm, but nighttime temperatures are cool. We also have a lack of weed pressure or less weed pressure in the fall compared to the spring. So that offers us some advantages when we put new seed down and have open soil exposed.
I think you really hit it there, with soil temperatures, with the weed pressure. I like that the overnight temperatures are dropping down too, not increasing like we see in the spring. So I think those are really the key points that I'd consider. Once we've decided on a season to attack this with, what's some of the first steps that you're going to take with the existing lawn to get it ready for that renovation or for that overseeding?
Yeah, so one of the first steps we're going to take is to really determine the level of overseeding or new seeding that we're going to be doing. So when you talk about overseeding, I kind of look at it two ways. Are we really trying to dramatically change the overall look of the lawn with new genetics, or are we just coming in after a hard summer where we might have had some loss of turf and we already have decent looking turf and we just want to fill in those bare areas or add some extra density? So we look at it in two ways. There's really, a light approach, and then there's like a heavy approach to the whole process.
I gotcha. And like in the lawn like this, what approach would you consider this to be, more of the light or the heavy side?
So in this specific lawn, this homeowner wanted to really change the look and feel of the lawn, and so we went in pretty heavy and pretty aggressive on the approach here. So we came in, we really scalped this lawn down from maybe a 4-inch mowing height all the way down to about 1 inch. We also came through multiple directions with a thatcher and pulled out thatch, and what we wanted to do here is expose some of the soil in the surface of this lawn. And so we exposed that soil, and what that's going to do is give us good contact with our seed that we've invested in and get that to the soil surface versus sitting on the top of the grass and not really having that contact with the soil.
Absolutely, and I think that's where a lot of DIYers and homeowners miss, is not getting enough of that thatch out, so you don't get that soil to seed contact, and then you don't get the germination and emergence that you'd expect.
Correct.
So we've got the timeline figured out, we've scalped this down, we've dethatched it heavily to expose some soil. Now we probably have to pick seed and seeding rates. So you want to walk us through maybe some species selection for the cool and transition zones?
Yeah, certainly. So in our area here, we're considered a cool season zone. So we have some options in this area, from ryegrass to Kentucky bluegrass to turf type tall fescue. Those are really the main three we like to focus on in this area. This specific lawn, we went with the MySoil Premium Double Dark Green 80-20 mix. That's a 80% perennial ryegrass, 20% Kentucky bluegrass mix. So what that's going to do is the ryegrass is going to give us our quick germination in 4 to 5 days, and then the bluegrass is going to be a little bit delayed, but it's going to fill in underneath and just give us a nice overall look. And that dark green from the Kentucky blue is going to really fill in over time and also provide us our repairability.
If I'm overseeding a tall fescue lawn, what should my expectations be and time to germination emergence there?
Yeah, you can expect probably a little bit on the longer end of that, but right around that 4 to 7 days, just a couple more days for that turf type tall fescue to germinate. But it's right in there within that first week.
And that's really what I've been seeing in the lab too when we've been planting out different variety trials, is we're just lagging by a day or two on that tall fescue. These new improved varieties especially seem to be pretty rapid germination and establishment compared to some of the older varieties of tall fescue that we might be familiar with.
Right.
The next thing I think we have to consider once we get seed in the ground is going to be fertility and fertilizer. The traditional school of thought would tell us that we we apply that starter fertilizer at the time of overseeding, but I've kind of seen you do it a little different. So can you walk through your fertility strategy that you recommend?
Yeah, so there's two approaches when we talk about overseeding and fertility, and one of them is to do the seeding and the fertilizer at the same time. My approach is a little bit different in the fact that I want to give advantage to the newer turf that we've planted. So we've scalped down the existing turf. We've taken it down very low and really thinned it out. If we go ahead and fertilize that same time that we seed, what we're going to do is still give an advantage to the existing turf because it's got an established root system. It can take up nutrient quickly. So now we're going to give an advantage to the existing turf to where it's going to outcompete those new seedlings that we've just germinated. And also we're going to be pushed to mow a lot quicker than we would if we delayed our fertility. So my strategy and what I like to do is actually delay applying the fertilizer for at least 1 week until the new seed has germinated, it's up and going. The new seed has enough energy in it to really get up and going and give it a good jump without fertilizer. So I like to get that seed germinated and then come back a week later and actually apply the fertilizer to the lawn. That way we're giving everything an advantage to grow at the same time. And also another approach is really to potentially, if you want to just seed, fertilize at the same time, what you can do is rely on an organic or a slow release product to where it'll kind of sit there a little bit more and release, in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I think both solid strategies, especially going with that slow release fertilizer. If you're, short on time, you only have 1 day to get this done, that slow release might be a really good option for you.
Right.
I think, after the seed's in the ground, I think there's a few other kind of considerations or options, decisions we're forced with. Are we going to just start irrigating? Are we going to roll it and start irrigating? Or are we going to do some sort of top dressing or mulching after that seed goes down? So what's your strategy there? Or what are your thoughts on after the seed's in the ground, what do we do?
In this specific scenario, we didn't do any mulching, which is adding compost or peat or something over the top of the seed to just protect it a little bit more, hold that moisture in. So that is one approach. You can also go ahead and once you've applied the seed, we can come through and roll it to really give it that soil to seed contact. That's a great option. We also didn't do that here. We're really relying on that seed getting down to the soil. And then really the key to the whole thing is the next step, which is proper irrigation. And that's really what's going to determine how well your overseeding comes in. And so the approach with that is just to keep it wet all the time. So we want to make sure those sprinklers are continually cycling, or you're running a hose-end sprinkler over the area during this establishment time, because we do not want to let the soil surface dry out at this time. So just keeping everything wet during that first week is really going to be the thing that determines how successful your overseeding project is.
Absolutely, and I'd say the only caution I'd be there is we definitely want to keep that soil and the seed moist, but we don't want to over irrigate and wash seed down into low spots. We saw that in a newly seeded lawn on the drive over here. So you just want to be keeping it moist, wet, with those frequent but light applications of water, just keeping that seed zone moist.
Correct. In this area, we're not too concerned with, big rain events. This time of year, it's more mellow, which is a great advantage. But if you have the potential for large rain events and moving seed, that's where that top dressing or that mulch can really help out, and as well as rolling to really firm that seed into the soil. We're really trying to get the seed down into the slits from the thatching unit.
Yeah. So now, say we're 4 or 5 days later, ryegrass is just starting to pop in this lawn that we're in now. From a mowing management standpoint, what's the mowing strategy? How often, how high? I know a lot of people have different opinions on that.
So because we delayed our fertility, you can see the existing turf, which is dominating, obviously, you know, this stand. We can see the existing turf doesn't look very good. It's struggling, and we've left it that way on purpose. So we're gonna come in next week, we're gonna fertilize, and so now everything's gonna start growing. So you can see we're at about a 2-week mark before that fertilizer kicks in now. So about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, you know, after we overseeded is probably going to be our first mowing, where we're going to have to mow because now our established turf is really getting a jump. Our new turf still needs access to sunlight, and we don't want to crowd it out. So right about that 2.5 week mark is probably going to be our first mowing. Obviously you have small plants in the ground, but it's okay. Those plants have rooted, you know, decently deep, you know, at that time. And if you want to use a lighter mower at that time versus a ride-on, use more of a push mower, a rotary push mower, a reel mower. That's really up to you, but just keep your normal mowing practices for the most part.
Great. So we've got seed in the ground, it's growing, now we're mowing it. Is there anything else that we really need to consider?
Yeah, expectations are really based on, you know, how well you work through this process and keeping it, you know, keeping the soil moist, making sure the seed germinated. And, you know, from there, it really depends on how aggressive you were in your thatching and your seeding rate and what you should expect in return. So as I said early on, if you're going for, you know, just a light overseeding to fill in on a lawn that's already pretty nice, your expectations are going to be, you know, you're going to have those areas fill in and the lawn's going to look nice. If you're looking to really dramatically change the overall appearance of a lawn like we're trying to do here, you know, you're going to want to see some of the newer cultivars, those darker genetic colors show up, you know, over this existing turf.
Sure. And then something else, you know, and if you did the lawn tour video with Kris on Soil Lab a while back, you know that first year or so, that perennial ryegrass is really going to predominate. And then that second year, that blue is going to really start to fill in. So this lawn's going to continue to get darker and darker over the course of several years. But we should expect basically month 1 results.
Yeah, no, that's not unreasonable in this scenario.
The other thing that I'll see some homeowners run into, and as I look around here, it'll be interesting to see how these come in. You still might have some bare patches here and there. Don't hesitate to go out there, weasel those, throw a little extra seed and mulch on them, just to give those a little advantage if you're not coming in those bare spots like you want to.
Yeah, certainly.
One thing that I notice in this lawn is there are a few weeds here and there. It's not overbearing whatsoever, but Kris, could you just speak to a little bit of pre-emergent weed control, post-emergent weed control, and what our strategies are there?
Yeah, so this lawn in particular, not a ton of weed pressure in this lawn. And so there are some chemicals out there that we can go ahead and apply for some pre and post emergent control at the time of seeding. The rates on those and how they're applied are very specific. And so I really try to encourage homeowners most of the time, because we're taking advantage of seeding in the fall, to stray away from the weed control at the time of seeding. And so when I talk to a customer about overseeding, I'll have them hold off on any weed and feed products if they're looking to overseed, you know, in the next few months. I'll have them hold off on those, and then I'll also hold off on anything at the time of seeding to get that grass the best advantage that it can have at that early establishment phase. Once we get about 2 to 3 weeks into the grow-in after we've overseeded, we can come in with some post-emergent weed control and either spot spray or blanket treat, depending on the amount of weed pressure in any of these lawns that you overseed.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate what Kris said. My wife and I just went into a new property. I certainly need to overseed the yard, but it's going to be a year-long planning process for me starting next spring with my weed control to get those weeds under control before I go into that fall renovation or that fall overseeding. So just getting that weed pressure down before your fall renovation or overseeding is going to be really important.
Right.
So Kris, can you just kind of summarize, give us kind of a bullet pointed list again, just to wrap up about what it takes to get this lawn overseeded?
Yeah, I think the bullet pointed list is really timing, you know, looking to target that fall timing. That's going to give you some advantages over the spring. How aggressive, really evaluate your lawn, where it's at, how aggressive you're going to be in your overseeding approach, whether you're really trying to change the overall look with genetics or you're just trying to fill in some areas that are a little bit thin. And then that leads to, how aggressive you are with your thatching or your dethatching, your mowing, your scalping, that process. The next process is really, the irrigation. Once you've seeded and determined your seeding rates, the irrigation control, making sure that you keep the surface moist at all times. The next one's going to be your fertility control, and that's a real critical component of, how we get the best results we can with the new genetics coming in over the existing turf. And then last one, our second to last one, is really going to be your mowing practices and timing, coming in, about 2.5 weeks after you've overseeded and start that mowing process again. And then the last one would be, post-establishment weed control, coming in and cleaning out any existing weeds, either spot spraying or blanket spraying the lawn.
You may have mentioned it, but I'll just reiterate, you need to pick the right species and the genetics that you keep mentioning, and you may opt or not to put some sort of top dressing or mulch down, and that can range, like Kris mentioned, anything from compost to a topsoil to peat or anything like that. Right. So I just see this as something that really anybody can do. If you've got a reasonably sized yard, you're going to need an afternoon to get this done.
Yeah, so planning's key. You want to have it planned out, not try and rush it and do it right. If you're going to spend the money on quality seed genetics, they're not cheap, but the results will be something that you'll really be rewarded with. Thanks for following along in this video. Again, I'm Kris with MySoil.
And I'm Matt.
We hope these tips and tricks help you get the desired lawn that you're looking for.